From the last Stylebender's conflicted take on the fight, to the American gangster calling the Reaper the best middleweight in UFC history, the pros have revealed who will win at UFC 290 between Robert Whittaker and Dricus du Plessis. Israel Adesanya doesn't know who to side with on this one, and it's not cause he thinks both of them are on the same level. The middleweight champ wants some fresh blood to satisfy himself, and he was willing to give the South African contender his title shot right away, but the UFC decided to first pit him against Rob. Talking on his YouTube channel, Izzy revealed that he actually tried to make the fight happen, and even got in touch with the UFC brass, asking for a showdown against Dricus in the Allegiant Stadium. You guys know Adesanya likes to stay active, and since there are no other fighters in the top 5 he hasn't beaten already, there's no point for him in waiting around any longer. The Kiwi Nigerian has beaten Bobby Knuckles twice already, so he obviously doesn't want to fight him again. Then there's also the matter of the beef with du Plessis, cause he made some comments about becoming the real African champ. Izzy and Kamaru Usman left the continent as kids, and they choose to live in countries like the USA and New Zealand. This kind of thing doesn't sit right with the middleweight king, and he's sworn to drag Dricus' carcass across South Africa. Even though Izzy wants to get his hands on Stillknox that badly, he doesn't actually think du Plessis got what it takes to defeat Rob. According to the last Stylebender, Whittaker's either gonna finish Dricus off in the second round, or he's gonna beat him black and blue for 3 straight rounds. The only chance Izzy gives to du Plessis to win is by fighting a little dirty, but even then the Reaper might be able to match him there as well. Bobby is simply faster and much fitter than the South African, and he's got way better cardio than Dricus. That's why Adesanya is giving his old rival a 70% chance of winning, which is massive, considering that almost anything can happen in the octagon at any given moment. Like one small miscalculation or a minor misstep could change the face of the match in an instant, but Izzy has complete faith in Whittaker to get the job done. The middleweight champ admitted that the 70% he's giving to Rob should be much higher, and he's quoted such a small number because he wants to fight du Plessis so badly. Dana White announced that this match between the two middleweights will serve as the fight for the #1 contender spot, and the winner's gonna take on the reigning champ in a fight later in 2023 that's being targeted for Sydney, Australia. After Dana made the fight official, du Plessis took to Twitter and said that he's gonna prove everyone who thinks he's gonna lose wrong. Izzy responded to this by telling him to please win. The last Stylebender wants Dricus to do well for this one, because he has got a lot of vested interest in meeting him down the line. But he knows what's probably going to happen at UFC 290. Even Adesanya's greatest rival, Alex Pereira, knows this, which is why he didn't beat around the bush when the fight was announced and said that it's going to be easy money for the Reaper. You can't blame the Poitin for being so straightforward with his prediction, because it's nearly impossible to bet against Rob. Pereira himself got an easier path to the title because he was handed the fight with Izzy. If he had to go through Whittaker first, then things would have played out a lot differently. If Adesanya wasn't around, Rob would have been the champ for sure. That's why the UFC tried to give challengers a direct shot against Izzy rather than getting them to go through Bobby first. If you don't believe me, then look at the top contenders of the division. How many have beaten Whittaker? The fighters on the UFC roster know exactly how good Rob is in the octagon. That's why they're all betting on him to take the win at the International Fight Week. Cody Stamann summed it up best. The bantamweight fighter thinks that Dricus is good and has done well for himself so far, but the Reaper is too special. Cody even thought that Rob won the second fight he had with Adesanya. Chris Dorcas, the UFC light heavyweight, highlighted that du Plessis gets hit a lot, and Whittaker is a guy who's going to take complete advantage of something like that. He also pointed out that Stillknox starts breathing through his mouth just a couple of minutes into the fight, so the gas tank's going to be a big factor in the fight, because not everyone can match Rob's pace and stamina in the octagon. Matt Frivola said that both guys have a similar fighting style, but Whittaker's got tons more experience competing at the highest level. So even if Dricus tried to turn it into a brawl, as he has done in the past, Bobby can just tone it down and beat him with superior technique. A lot of other UFC pros like Drew Dober, Alex Morono, and Nathan Levy are all picking Whittaker at UFC 290. This is a complete mismatch, and the predictions prove as much. On some level, even du Plessis knows this, because he admitted he hasn't done the smart thing by agreeing to this fight. While talking on the Submission Radio, Dricus said that he didn't become an MMA fighter to be smart. And if he wanted to do that, then he would have stayed in school and gotten a regular job. Stillknox embraces his warrior spirit, and doesn't want to run from fights only because they're going to be difficult for him. Du Plessis also added that he doesn't want to fight for the title just because of a rivalry that was sparked because of some comments he made, and the champ just overreacted to the whole thing. He's going to get to Izzy in due time, but for now, Rob has his complete attention. Dricus might not be the favorite, but the man's a true fighter if he's willingly going up against a monster like Whittaker. The South African doesn't want to hide behind a made-up rivalry and hype trains, and that's something rare to see, even with a roster full of killers. This fighting spirit hasn't gone unnoticed by the Reaper, and he has declared Du Plessis to be an honorable warrior. Rob said in an interview that guys like this are difficult to come by, and he's really excited to face Dricus. Bobby Knuckles believes that Still Knox sees the sport for what it is, and also acknowledged his comments on not doing the smart thing by accepting this fight. Just out of respect for a sentiment like that, Whittaker's gonna give everything he's got during their fight. The Reaper never engages in trash talks to sell his event and prefers to win over fans with his performance in the octagon. He finally has an opponent who believes in the same principles as he does. Don't get me wrong here, guys, because Rob's still gonna try and take Du Plessis' head off in the octagon. He just wants to reclaim his title more than anything. After all his years of fighting, you'd expect the Reaper to slow down, but that's not the case. In fact, he keeps getting better after every fight because he learns from his mistakes. During his first fight with Adesanya, Bobby Knuckles tried rushing into him, and that didn't play out in his favor as he got knocked out cold. So Whittaker adjusted his approach and adapted to Izzy a lot better in the rematch. He endured through the opening rounds, and when the last stylebender started tiring out in the championship rounds, the Reaper took things to the ground and tried to finish it off there. The judges didn't think that was enough back then, but Rob is sure to come up with an improved strategy the next time around. The man just keeps getting better with every passing day, and that's the reason why Chael Sonnen admires Whittaker so much. The bad guy said on his YouTube channel that the Reaper is as good as the legendary middleweights of old, and he puts him right up there on the top with the likes of Michael Bisping and Anderson Silva. Sonnen has faced those guys himself in the past, and has even beaten up some of them, so his take on Rob holds a lot of weight. The Reaper may have lost to Izzy twice now, but Sonnen still thinks that he's a much better fighter than the champ because he's more complete. Izzy doesn't have the same grappling prowess as Bobby, and Chael believes that Whittaker can take the stylebender out in due time. The bad guy is obviously picking the former champ against Still Knox at UFC 290, unless there's an upset, of course. So from the American gangster declaring the Reaper as the best middleweight in the history of the UFC, to the last stylebender's conflicted take on the fight, this was who the pros revealed will win at UFC 290 between Robert Whittaker and Dricus Du Plessis.